All right, we're back at Guitar Essentials Level 1, and we're at Lesson 4. And today what we're going to talk about is time, because when we divide time, we have rhythm. So I'm just going to read this first little bit here. A measure in music. Now, here's a measure. So we have the staff down here on the bottom. And from that treble clef to the first line, we call that a measure. I haven't added a time signature here, but but usually we're going to see four beats for each measure. And here's another measure, and here's another measure, and here's another measure. So this makes 4 measures. And the bar lines are just simply those lines. Within each of those measures, which are marked by these lines, we'll have a certain number of beats. Now, beats are different than rhythm. A beat is more like what you would find, for instance, on a clock. It just goes tick, tock, tick, talk, and that ends up being the beat. But in music, we can change the tempo. So tempo meaning the speed. And learning to play in time is obviously, when it comes to a musical instrument, is pretty important. And so I think I'd probably suggest getting a metronome. And we'll discuss a metronome in greater detail shortly here. A measure in music divides time, right? So music is in time, and it's dividing time. Rhythm divides time. Like a clock divides time into seconds and minutes, a measure divides time into beats. And or another word that we can use here is a pulse, right? So a beat and a pulse are not a rhythm. A rhythm divides a beat and a pulse. So let me give you, I'll give you an example, and I'm just going to use a chord and this metronome. So let's see if I can get the metronome to work here. There is the pulse, the beat, right? And that would essentially amount to your foot tapping, right? Now, if I were to play in time exactly as that pulse is, okay, so I wasn't really playing much of a rhythm. I was just copying the pulse. But if I start to divide this a little bit more and play a rhythm, how about if I break it into eighths? So then it becomes, when I divide the beat like that, and divide the pulse, I end up with a rhythm. There's just countless ways I can divide the pulse, or I can divide the beat. But I think you'll probably note that I'm referencing the beat very closely, and it gives you a sense of time, time with harmony. It's pretty cool. In a studio situation, they call that a click track. You hear a click track through your headphones, and it keeps you, it aligns everyone that's recording with the same click track. Of course, I can change the tempo of this. Why don't we try that? I'll dial this tempo down a little bit. change the tempo, and that's just at BPM. That's about at 80. So that would be sort of what we'd call, andante, or sort of a walking pace, 70 to 90 beats per minute. This is just a general kind of idea. Largo would be very slow, and Allegro, lively and fast, between 110 and 140. I think the other one was a slow Allegro, about 110. Okay, so there's a few terms there that are very important. Beat and pulse is like, think of it as a ticking clock. Then there's tempo, which is the speed of that ticking clock, which in music we change. Then there's the word measure, which is measures are divided by these lines, by these bar lines, when it comes to reading music, and we actually define tempo with certain words. I'm not expecting you to memorize these words, but just know that being able to recognize slow tempos, quick tempos, medium tempos is really important. And if you're going to practice in a rhythm style, you need to take the chords that you know so far and change them seamlessly. And a great way to do that on a slightly moving ahead topic. A great way to learn how to play rhythm very, very effectively is to use a metronome and play along with that metronome, because that metronome actually sort of plays the role of a drummer. And at the same time, it's teaching you how to hear two things at the same time. It's no small trick to play in perfect synchronization with the metronome. And it's one of the most fundamental requirements of being able to play in time with interesting rhythms and accompany other players, no matter how simple the music is. Knowing what tempo and rhythm are and what they feel like is essential. Okay, that's a little bit of a talk about measures, bar lines, tempo, and this magic little thing called a metronome. There's some important terms here that have to do with the language of music, and so I would very strongly encourage you to learn these terms so you can speak this new language that you want to speak, which is not just the language of the guitar, but it's the language of the musical language which the guitar speaks. All right, we'll talk soon, and the next one up is Lesson 5.